don't even have to gavel the meeting to order. Everybody's quiet. We will call the meeting to order. We do have a quorum with Dr. Harrell being absent. We're going to accommodate some of our guests tonight. We're going to shuffle the agenda around a little bit. And the first thing we'll do will be the ABC presentation, get that out of the way, and then we'll do our
PAS
report. So, if you do the Attendance Boundary Committee.
Good evening, everyone. We have Desiree Zepeda here, who is the spokesperson for the Culver Attendance Boundary Committee. We also have Brianna and John here from the committee. She can raise her hand and say hello. And so Desiree will walk through this, and I'm available as well if there are any questions.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm going to start out by giving you a brief rundown of what our committee's process was to getting to the proposal that we are presenting to you today. We first met on January 7th, and the administration presented the enrollment projections and the initial zoning option for Culver Elementary. We reviewed those options, we provided questions, and feedback was given to us from the administration upon our request. We met again on January 14th, in which case the committee discussed multiple different options based on the feedback we had gotten back from the administration from our initial questions. And we did reach a consensus that evening to present for public input. The public input meeting took place on January 31st. There were 3 members of the public that did speak that evening, and the committee met again on February 4th to review the information that was presented to us from the public on the 31st. We reviewed the public input and discussed options to try to accommodate some of those concerns or at least respond to them, and we voted on a final recommendation to present to you on February 4th. The one thing that we added after hearing public input was a grandfathering for 5th graders. That would be 5th graders. It will be 5th graders next year when Culver opens. Now you will see this is our final recommendation for zoning for Culver Elementary. And basically our 2 main reasons for this are to provide relief to Thomas Elementary and to also allow Culver to open under capacity. Are there any questions? Yes.
Ms. Catherine.
The Thomas students will be transferring over to Meyer. Is that correct?
They will be transferred to Meyer and Culver. There's a little bit going to both.
So that the power line.
If you look at where Power Line Road is, the light purple area above that and below that both used to be Thomas. So that is now being split, where some of it will go to Thomas and some of, will go to Culver and some of them will go to Meyer.
Okay. The reason I was questioning, because I had a couple of parents, I think they misread the letter, and they were thinking they were automatically going to Meyer from Thomas, and they weren't understanding. They thought that Meyer was also over capacity.
This has brought Meyer slightly under capacity for next year. They were at capacity. This gives them a little bit of relief.
With transferring those from Thomas?
Yes.
Okay.
But
That's
some of them are also shifting to Culver.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? We appreciate your work. This is always difficult, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this time we will do the PASA. I know.
This is when we always leave. They tell us you should.
Okay. Can everyone hear me? All right, great.
Good.
Well, thank you for having us again. We're glad to be here, and as usual, you're growing. No big surprise, right? So there's really no reason to, skate around this fact. We're just going to kind of jump right in. I wanted to mention this year, there aren't a lot of changes to what we've really presented. There's more growth. We have a few new neighborhoods to present. So as usual, we are going to jump right in with our housing projections. When we look at the economy, what's happening with different developments around Lamar, and also our enrollment projections. So Dr. Tapera will come up as usual, and she will discuss all these developments and how the student enrollment projections affect your campuses in the future. So without any further ado, I do want to briefly go over something that I've been adding to some of these presentations. I get a lot of questions about where does everyone come from? You know, we're growing so much. And so I just wanted to kind of hit on that real quickly here. In Houston Metro, 2017, these statistics come from the US Census. Generally, Houston Metro has been gaining between 110 and or 90,000 and about 120,000 people annually. And that comes from the red line here, which is the natural increase, births minus deaths. So that's about half. And then international and domestic migration. You'll see that domestic migration has really taken a tumble, and that was really after the oil downturn. But when you look at that 94,000 figure, about a quarter, 22,000 actually are moving to Fort Bend County. So this county receives about a quarter of all the new population annually. So that really comes to about 8,000 new homes that are needed in this county, almost on an annual basis, 7,000 to 8,000 new homes. So when you look at the 5-year trend from fall 2012 to fall 2017, Lamar, circled here, is the 6th highest growth district in those 5 years in Metro Houston, with 6,000 students. In terms of percent growth, that's 23% in those 5 years. No surprise. Now, when you look at the fastest growth districts in Texas, you're number 6. I believe that was what you were last year as well. So with 1,300 students added annually in 2017, about the same in fall 2018. So, a couple of things that set you apart. I wanted to note this year. Really, everything on this slide has to do with your wealth, economically disadvantaged population. When you look at median household income in this district, it's increased 7% in 5 years. So it's now over 80,000. From 2012 to 2017, you had the largest percentage decrease in the economically disadvantaged student population in Metro Houston. And you also had the largest decrease in all school districts in Texas that are greater than 10,000 enrolled. So when builders, developers, retailers are looking for places to develop, they generally use wealth and economic prosperity as one of their variables. So you're becoming one of those places that they look toward. So kindergarten enrollment, starting to talk about the actual student trends in the district, has been trending upward now for about 3 years. That's not going to end. All of our birth data, which is the red line from the state, is showing that trend continuing. With all the new housing growth, it's no doubt to continue. Another quality of life factor we always look into, you know this, is of course your star passage rates, and we every year tally these up and we average all the subsets of the population. And this year, for districts larger than 30,000 students, you're ranked 9 in the state at 81% passing. So here's a little map showing you how you rank amongst Houston metro districts. All the orange and red are your highest ranked districts, and of course, most of the Fort Bend County districts stand out. We've been really looking closely at charter schools, how this affects your enrollment. You aren't quite there yet in terms of it really affecting your enrollment. Right now, based on TEA data, we estimate that, and surveys put out by us every year, we estimate that there are over 500 students, or 1.6% of your K-12 population is actually going to charter schools. 2% attend private schools. and another 1.3 attend nearby districts, so transfers. When you look at those charter school students in a map form, where they all come from, and this is all charter schools in the metro area, you'll see that some of the urban districts, Houston, Alief, Galveston, they see some of the highest transfer rates, over 10%. You are ranked 19th, still pretty low, but there are certain districts like Fort Bend and Katy that are increasing. So this is something we have to watch out for. We know there are a couple of really big charter systems moving in. IDEA, you may not even have ever heard of this system. They want to build 10 schools in Metro Houston, all have 1,500 students. Their first 2 will be in the north suburbs. So these charter systems are moving outside the Beltway now, almost all of them. So, a couple of employment highlights, because we know job growth is really what, in turn, increases the population. Metro-wide, in 2018, we gained over 110,000 jobs. The Greater Houston Partnership believes that we'll gain about 70,000 this next year, 13% in healthcare alone. And unemployment remains really low, below 4%. But manufacturing and logistics is really, really becoming some of the, I guess, talking points in some of the western suburbs. Fulshire, Rosenberg, distribution centers are opening up almost weekly, right? So we've heard of the Twinwood Business Park, just south of I-10, between Fulshire and Brookshire. We've got a couple of buildings going up there with different developments. Man Diesel is one of them. But the Costco Distribution Center was announced just in the last couple of months, up there on I-10 as well. Dollar Tree announced they're looking into building a Rosenberg Distribution Center in far western Rosenberg. So when you start adding these up, it's hundreds of thousands of jobs coming to these far fringes, which is your district. So one of the reasons that this is happening is because West Houston is kind of centrally located between the port, Austin, San Antonio, and of course the 7 million people that live here. So you've got 12 million people that these distribution centers are serving. So how does LCISD rank in terms of housing starts? You're number 2 this year. This is the first time I believe you've been ranked number 2. You had 3,100 housing starts, and that's up 25% in 1 year. In the metro area, the housing starts went up 10%. So Fort Bend ISD is actually still ranked number 1 in terms of housing starts for the 4th year in a row. That will switch very soon, mainly because Fort Bend's running out of land in the northern part of their district. Within 5 years, they will not have about 1,000 of the housing occupancies that they have today. Most of those will shift toward Lamar. This is a 1-year projection map. So your colors are your planning units that show the highest numbers of housing occupancies in the next year. And I've highlighted a couple of neighborhoods here. This is removing age-restricted housing. Lamar is very favored for age-restricted housing. So some of our biggest growth neighborhoods in year 1 are Jordan Ranch and Tamaron in the Fulshire area, McCrary Meadows and Talavera up here in the Grand Parkway corridor, and in the south, Walnut Creek and Veranda. Veranda actually is number 1 with over 250 occupancies in the next year. Looking out 10 years, same map, same colors, everything's now red and orange. So, same data, just a lot bigger numbers. Tamaron, Jordan Ranch, each with over about 2,500 new housing occupancies. That's not including, that's excluding age-restricted neighborhoods. Cross Creek, 1,200. Fulshire Farms, which hasn't even broken ground yet, and we don't even know if it would be called that, is 1,400. Some of these down here in the south, you'll see there's a lot of small neighborhoods in the south. We don't have these big master plan communities. But they're also highlighted here as well. But there are 3 that are turned red: Veranda, McCrary Meadows, and Talavera. Red means that 3/4 of those housing occupancies will happen in the first 5 years of projection period. So those are building out very rapidly. Most of those are in the Northeast. In terms of apartments, multifamily construction, just kind of highlighted and generalized where we're projecting most of the growth. West Park Tollway, Grand Parkway, Southwest Freeway. No surprise. The red blobs are indicative of where we know new apartments are moving in right now. They're either under construction or planned, or they're going to happen sooner in the projection period. We have more confidence, or they'll actually impact the district more by having more students. Blue is just kind of, yeah, we know something's going to eventually happen. So those are the 3 hot spots. So some highlights in Rosenberg. There are actually 4 apartment properties planned, about to break ground in the next few years. One of them is age restricted. But City Council had approved a resolution, essentially, saying that if a new multifamily unit is planned within a half a mile of an existing one, they can deny the permits, they can deny the zoning. So you're going to start seeing in Rosenberg more sparse distribution of apartments from here on. McCrary Meadows, I mentioned this neighborhood earlier. It's nestled between the Grand Parkway and 359. It had the 3rd highest number of housing occupancies last year in this district. So it's kind of a surprise. They just doubled their land. The developer is now planning 400 more homes than they were a year ago. And I mentioned this, the Copeland and Powerline Road corridors. You don't really see them, these neighborhoods highlighted on our map because they're all very small. But when you add these neighborhoods together, there are about 6 down here. Preserve at Rosenberg, Still Creek Ranch, Seabourn Landing, etc. Almost 1,900 new homes planned in just those few neighborhoods in the next 10 years. We know the freeway from Reading Road eastward is about to be complete. That's really going to kind of be a boost for people moving here. They're going to really see that as a speedy way to get to Houston. I mentioned Dollar Tree. Well, one thing about this distribution center, if it actually happens, if the city of Rosenberg and the county can all come together, and I believe there are incentives involved, they want to put utilities down along some of these corridors. And if that happens, I guarantee you're going to see development spurred in western Rosenberg, residential development. So we've actually boosted our projections, particularly in the next 4 to 10 years in that region, knowing this. And then, of course, throughout the district, we see improved access points from roads under construction. You live in them every single day. In terms of total housing, we're projecting 54,831 new residential housing units. So single family, apartments, RVs, whatever it is. We lump them all together here. Single family, it's about the same for the first 5 years of the projection period, which is blue. A little higher, actually quite a bit higher. It went off our chart. So 15,000 homes in the first 5 years, 26,000 in the latter 10. A lot of that's just because of what I mentioned earlier. Fort Bend's building out, Katie's building out. The next place to build is Lamar. Now, we know that not every home has a child. I mentioned age-restricted communities. You have a lot of them. Sweetgrass is one of them where the entire community is age-restricted. So they don't have any kids per home. But district-wide, your average is 0.57 students per single-family home and 0.41 per apartment. those ratios, we actually look at every single neighborhood. You know, we look at every apartment. We track these ratios because it changes every year. So some of the developing neighborhoods like Cross Creek still have a very low ratio of 0.26, but just a few years ago that was below 0.1. So as those, the new schools have opened up in the area, they're putting more traditional, conventional single-family homes. That ratio is creeping up. Our moderate growth scenario is showing an increase in the first year of about 1,400 students for next fall. But you'll notice that number just creeps up every single year in the projection period, basically. So there are a couple of ups and downs, but very slight. Overall, you're going to be growing more and more and more. We could be looking at 56,000 students in 10 years under the moderate growth. But we, of course, have to put together a low and a high. And the low would be 53,000. That might consider, we might consider a couple of charter schools opening up in the district that we don't know about yet. Maybe the economy tumbles a bit. Or we could be looking at closer to 60,000 students in 10 years if some developments really kick off, maybe developments we don't even know about yet. So with that, Stacy will come up and discuss some of the growth at particular campuses.
Thank you. Okay, so that's a lot of numbers and a lot of generalities about how many students in 10 years. But what is important for planning purposes is where those students and in which year and how that relates to the current capacities of the current schools. So this is another heat map like you've been seeing, but this represents students, not necessarily homes, because of the issues that Justin talked about with the senior housing, and every home has a different number of students yielded. Clearly, the northwest part of the district has the 3 highest growth planning units in the district in red. Keep in mind that that red area that you see represents 3 planning units, and each of those planning units is projected to gain over 500 students in the next 10 years. So this is looking 10 years out. All of the orange spots are each projected to add between 200 and 500 students. And it's hard to see the boundaries of those planning units, but some of them are very small. So there's several, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 orange planning units down here in the south part, to give you some idea of the magnitude of student growth projected. But what I think will really help drive home this point is to think about this by elementary attendance zone. So these are the proposed attendance zones for next fall with the opening of Culver. And the number under each name represents how many new students are projected to move into that attendance zone in the next 10 years. Okay? This assumes that right now you have enough space for everybody that currently lives there, but these are the additional kids on top. Okay? So, for example, Carter's expected to add 600 new students. That's almost a school, almost another school, if your schools are 750 capacity. Meyer, another 600, that's another school. Culver, that's a school and a little bit. Thomas and Arredondo together are an extra school. You see where I'm going here. Frost gets it. Frost is another 700 students, that's another school. Bentley, 677, that's another school. And that doesn't even touch the Northwest, right? So Lindsay with 2,100 additional students projected in 10 years, that's 3 more schools in what is currently Lindsay right now. And Huggins, I mean, that's another, perhaps 4 schools, that's just off the charts. It's easy for me to stand here and make generalities, but it's important to know the priorities, the order in which these schools are needed, and the best way to balance all of the factors of where the district either owns property or can purchase property, and how the catchment areas can be drawn to best utilize the capacity that already exists. So let's start with this step-by-step process. What's needed first? And I'll give you a hint, this is exactly what you heard last year, so I'm going to breeze through it pretty quickly because you've all heard it, and the recommendation has not changed, but certainly know that, that the need has not declined, has not decreased. So after the opening of Culver in the fall, down here, the next step would be the data drives the need for 2 new elementary schools in 2020, opening in the northwest and the northeast. The district owns a site within that catchment, that yellow catchment area in Tamaron, which could be utilized by 2020. Otherwise, if that school is not opened, then Lindsay will have over 1,000 students projected to live there. Likewise, on the northeast, the district does not own a site in this location, although it's in the works. If it's not possible to open a school by 2020, if it isn't owned yet, I recognize that possibility, but I'm telling you that the data suggests that it can be used as soon as 2020, recognizing that that's one of 1,000 factors in making the decision about when to open a school. The next step is 2021. In the northwest again, this catchment area is drawn on the west side of Huggins because Lindsay and the potential Tamaron site pulled students from the east side of Huggins. Now, if we can pull students from the west side of Huggins, we can avoid double moving students as much as possible. It's going to be inevitable in that part of the district because of just the sheer volume of growth. But if we can obtain a site on the west side of Huggins, it can certainly be used by 2021. Moving down to the central part of the district, also in 2021, both Hutchinson and Arredondo will be overcrowded, and a site in Veranda could be a possibility to pull students both from Hutchinson and Arredondo. The next step is in 2022, 2 more schools. The district does not own sites in either of these locations. This here in the central is designed like this. The yellow catchment area is designed like this, suggesting that a school here would be needed to pull from both Bentley and the west side of Frost. And Justin mentioned earlier the McCreary Meadows and the intensive growth that has happened in that is going to cause more overcrowding and accelerate the overcrowding in Frost compared to what we thought last year. But again, last year we told you the same site. It's just emphasized this year. And by 2022, the Culver-Meyer area in the south will again be overcrowded. There are a couple of new developments in the works, in the planning stages down in that yellow area that would be good possibilities for the district to consider as an elementary site for 2022. All 6 of these sites that I have just told you are currently funded. So we have, but that's not the end of the growth, of course. And so beyond 2022, in this purple outlined area in the north, if you add up all of the students projected to live in that area, about 7,200 students. But the schools in that area, including a new school in Tamaron and a new school west of Huggins, so that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools, would have a total capacity of 3,650. So if we can put a student in every seat in those current schools, that still means that even after opening 2 more schools up there, beyond in the last 5 years of this projection period, we could see the need for about 4 or 5 more schools in that area. And that is, again, the same thing we told you last year, but it emphasizes the heat map that I showed you, showing 2,100 additional students in Lindsay and 2,800 additional students in Huggins. Likewise, on the south, this is the catchment area, this purple line, and within that catchment area, about one more school could be utilized in the latter part of this projection period. This is the summary of that. The 2 schools in 20 in pink, in yellow is 2 schools in 21, and in green, 2 schools in 22. And then the purple areas, an amorphous sort of, let's keep this in mind and see how things settle out in the next few years. At the middle school and junior high level, the growth is similar to last year's growth, and of course, focused in the Northwest. With the opening of Roberts Middle School will provide the necessary relief for Lehman here in the short term, but again, the long-term needs are substantial. Although at the middle school level, these are the years in which the schools are projected to exceed their 120% capacity. So we're for the 6th grade level, the middle school level, we're in good shape for a few years, and likewise at the junior high level for a few years. But let's go to the high school. Of course, the imminent need for capacity at the high school level is in the south. George Ranch is projected to have over 2,700 resident students next fall. Keep in mind, these are resident students. They live in the area. This isn't the number that, the exact number that will match enrollment. But the need for high school number 5 in the south is clear and can be used as soon as it can be opened. But let's not forget that all of this that we talked about, this growth in the north, I know it feels like Fulshear just opened, but Fulshear High School, but there is a growing need for another high school in the north. And so I'm going to show you that chart with the numbers. Clearly, George Ranch is exceeding its 120% threshold currently. But this is of more concern to me because so George Ranch and Terry will both be relieved by the high school number 6 in the south. But both Fulshear and Foster are projected to exceed their 120% threshold in 2023. And so this is the time to start thinking about a high school site in the north, if at all possible. So with that, we can take any questions.
I have to. Any questions, or as overwhelmed again as you were last year? Drop. Yes.
I just want to hear something. There's other schools growing great capacity. Are they thinking about increasing the capacity in the elementary schools? I mean, we're at 750, but to start thinking about having to go like to 2-story because of the land availability?
Elementary schools?
Yeah.
That's a philosophical question for the district. There are other districts that build larger schools. For example, Fort Bend built Ann Sullivan with a capacity of 1,200, and it's 2 stories. But that was because it was needed in the middle of a built-out area, and they were very, very limited in land availability.
What the board would have to do is to begin to look at master plan principles, and if you want to determine whether or not you change those, that's where that would start. They don't make that type of
Okay,
decision.
I was wondering if that was.
No,
Staying ahead of the game and acquiring our land before it's too late.
That's what I was getting at.
But you'd also remember from our strategic planning effort, one of the things that we got kudos for was having the neighborhood schools.
And the size of the number of students, because
Number of
they can go to other districts and be with 3,000 students. So, and that's why I think we're getting the growth, because they're coming over the borders into our district.
But I'm thinking ahead.
I know you
10,
are.
15, 20 years from now, when we get to that point, property-wise, land is not getting
Just
cheaper.
wrestling it away from people that let us
So
build
get to
them.
work.
There's land there, it's just wrestling it away from people to let us develop a school there. They'd rather develop money-making.
Yeah, that's why it's important to get on that really early. Don't wait.
That's what I was getting from your report. It's
Yeah.
Deloitte. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the work. All right, now we move back to the agenda. Looking at our regular board meeting items. Dr. Randall?
The first item is consider approval of out-of-state student trip request. Consider approval of budget amendment request.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Page 20, just to get it clarified for me. It was, let me, patience. When you're saying the budget changes due to the adjusting campus budgets due to reduction in student enrolled, is that in that particular choir? Or is that in overall school reduction?
Every year when we build a budget, we have estimated enrollment, and then after the snapshot date in October, we have what the reported actual enrollments are, and then we go back and we adjust the per pupil allocations at that point. So some schools have lost enrollment, and so we withdraw funds from those, and if you've gained, we give them more money.
So the choir did not necessarily, I'm
No,
understanding, you're talking
it's
about
based
the
on the
entire
whole
school.
school.
Okay. All right.
Which,
The first one, where it says, the second budget is to adjust for campus budgets due to the reduction.
Oh.
So I was wondering if it had anything to do with the first one.
no,
Okay.
they're separate.
But they were both under Foster High School.
Yes, they both apply to Foster High School, but they're totally
But anytime you're
different
talking
reasons.
about enrollment, it's for the entire school. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Next item is consider ratification of finance and investment reports. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to extend the current depository contract with Wells Fargo for an additional 2 years. The next item, we ask the Board to consider ratification of donations to the district.
I have a question.
Need you have an addendum to that? Yes, ma'am.
On the Arredondo PTO donation to purchase the TV for the cafeteria of $5,571.84, do all the cafeterias have cameras?
They've got
This-
cameras, but this is a
I mean, a
TV.
TV, I'm sorry. Do the other campuses have TVs?
Not all of them have,
No, not all of them do. That's been a choice of the campus.
campus.
And for what purpose?
Information for students, announcements, things like that, instructional.
They
Some
have things
campuses put them.
looping, don't they?
Yeah, depending on the presentation, they'll loop the presentation. We have digital signage application that they can use to loop it. Something different in the hallway versus the cafeteria, for example.
Like you see at the junior high and high school
Yes,
levels?
ma'am. Yeah.
Just to flash, but not all the elementary schools have that.
No.
Okay.
That's been a principal decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, we ask the Board to approve the attached resolutions for declaring Texas Education Diagnosticians Week. And the next one is Public School Week. And the next item is the instructional calendar.
Any questions on that one?
Will we have a
I figured we would.
presentation on this one?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, he's headed up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
No worries. Okay, thank you, David. So I'll give an overview of the 2019-2020 instructional calendar survey process. We had just over 11,000 total respondents. This survey was given at the end of January, between January 22nd and February 4th. You see a little under 7,500 parents, a little over 3,000 staff members, and then the other area, just under 500, there was another category, and that was filled with individuals such as students, grandparents, community, or business individuals. When you look at the overall participation, 66% of those respondents were parents, 29% were staff members, and that other was about 4%. When you look at every single response overall, or all responses, all stakeholders preferred option A at about 36%, whereas 64% of the respondents preferred option B. And option A was the traditional, similar to what we have this current school year, whereas option B ends the school year a little bit earlier, before June. It adds some minutes to the end of both the elementary and secondary bell schedule. When you break that down by participants of staff and by parents, on the left-hand side, 43% of all staff members preferred option A, and 57% of all staff members preferred option B. On the right-hand side, 33% of all parents preferred option A, and 67% of all of our parents preferred option B when you're looking at all of the responses. Now, this was an open link survey, and the intent was really to get input into the process. Over the past couple of years, we've heard a lot of input at our general staff meetings with administrators, at principal meetings, at the superintendent student advisory, or even comments in passing from parents about our calendar process. And really the intent of this was to take that feedback, but then put it back out to the community to see if there was some interest in that, or kind of what the pulse of the community was. It was an open link, so an open link, anyone can vote on that just going onto the website. And some of the benefits of an open link or anonymity, we hear that a lot with our teachers. They feel like even though we have a third-party provider giving this survey, they seem to feel like we have access to the raw data and we know who's voting for what or making a selection, which we do not. Also, with an open link survey, parents of pre-kindergarten or kindergarten students who will be parents for this calendar process can vote in that survey or make a selection. And also, any parent who doesn't have their contact information in the Skyward information system, they would have access to this survey as well. But when you have an open link survey, there are potential cons as well, which might be individuals who just really want to sit down to Starbucks and take a survey 50 or 60 times because they really want something to happen. And one of the things that our third-party provider provides is an IP address duplicate report. And so in this survey process, there were 30 IP address duplicates. 18 of those fell outside of Lamar CISD, and 12 of those were within LCISD. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean something bad. There are a lot of cases where apartment complexes, through their internet provider, will use one IP address, or in the case of Lamar CISD, with those 12 IP addresses, we've got, say, 3 or 4 facilities tied to one of those. So it's not uncommon, but there are those potential folks who say, yeah, but there's somebody either inside or outside of the district who might be taking the survey multiple times. So K-12 Insight, our third-party survey provider, ran a report first removing non-LCISD duplicate addresses in excess of 10. So what they're saying is anything outside of 10 from one IP address seems like an anomaly. And so they ran a report of that, which removes about 330 duplicate responses. And the overall results are about the same, with when you look at all of those removing external IP addresses for option B, 65% prefer that calendar option, and for option A, 35% of the folks prefer that option. If you break it down again into the staff on the left or the parents on the right, 42% of our staff members preferred option A, and 59% preferred option B. Again, this is removing external IP address duplicates. And on the right, when you look at parents, 32% prefer option A, and 68% prefer option B. But then again, as we mentioned, we had those 12 IP addresses that service multiple facilities. And if there's still some thought that, I really feel like there's a staff member that is out there taking too many surveys, I want to know what it's like if you removed every single duplicate IP address, where there's one IP address per survey submission, and what those results would look like. So they ran a report, and this is removing all internal and external. So there's no duplicates at all in these results. And in this case, there were just over 6,121 responses. 71% of all of those responses prefer calendar option B, and 29% prefer calendar option A. When you break that again into our groups, on the left-hand side is staff, 65% preferred option B, and 35% of staff members preferred option A, And from our parents, 72% preferred option B and 28% preferred option A. Again, this is removing all internal or external duplicate IP addresses, and in total, that's about 5,000 responses from our parents and about 1,000 responses from our staff members. So in making the recommendation that's in the board book to the board, we looked at this data, again, trying to get more feedback from the community, getting the pulse of what they might prefer, and the feedback, there was a very clear trend, looking at the overall results, removing duplicates throughout the process, that we feel like individuals prefer calendar option B, which led to the administration's recommendation.
Questions, comments?
I have a question.
Y'all go
first.
In the past, each school could sit down and come up with what calendar. Did they still have that option, or was it all on the survey?
So in the past, we used the district-wide Student Improvement Council process, and we opened it up, and we gave all of our campuses the availability, kind of as a blank slate, to make some calendar options. But there were always some constraints on that in terms of when you can start, when you can end, when the holidays would be. Fort Bend County Fair Day is one that you can't move, things like that. And so really, even when we get the calendar options, there was always a shift around the holidays. And traditionally, when you look back at the DSIC votes over the past 5 or 6 years, even since I've been here, the votes are typically well over 95% for what we traditionally have, with 1 or 2 votes from the DSIC for moving the Christmas holiday or moving spring break a little bit. And so we spoke with DSIC at the conclusion of last school year and again at the beginning of this school year, and presented them with this process, so they were involved, they understood. But when we made the decision for the holidays, we looked at both KDIC and Fort Bend ISD. KDIC has already approved their calendar, and all of the holidays align. So looking at that, plus what overall the DSI has recommended over the previous years, it made sense to give that as the traditional option, but then take into account some of the feedback we've heard from principal meetings or the community or general staff on building those things into the calendar.
But historically, the campus would have a discussion, and they had one vote that came back.
Right.
In this particular instance, everybody had their own opportunity to.
I just didn't know if there was a consensus of elementary versus secondary. Was there any one, which calendar seemed more apt that?
Well, again, and we'll let the results of the survey process speak for itself, but contextually, even going over this, during principal meetings, elementary principals, by and large, seem to be very satisfied with the B option. I think our secondary principals are probably more reserved, but no major grumblings or complaints from them.
Okay.
Hey, Joe, you got a question?
Why not start earlier and not extend the days?
So that's a good question. So actually, there are other districts in Texas that are starting before the 4th Monday in August, and they are they're districts of innovation, and that is about a 9 to 12-month process. And we've actually heard a lot of feedback about that from staff members who have some concerns over the DOI process. But more importantly, when we looked at that process, a lot of folks don't realize that it does have a 5-year expiration date. And a lot of the districts that signed up for that DOI process, they're approaching that date. And so we're actually interested in seeing what the agency wants to do with that process before you jump into that type of arena. But we have looked at DOI, but there are some teacher groups and individuals who are not in favor of that due to some of the exemptions you can have for certified teachers and other things like that. And so a lot of the feedback that we've heard has not necessarily been about starting earlier. It's always been about getting out before June for both summer school, and it aligns more with our neighboring districts.
Right, but is extending the day for an elementary student the answer? I mean, Fort Bend and Katy are both districts of innovation, right? They both are on the waiver program?
That's correct. I think an example in this case, another large district that looked at adding additional minutes to the school day was Houston ISD. And a couple of years ago, and they have a very similar bell schedule to us in terms of elementary and secondary. It aligns fairly equally. And so, again, with House Bill 2610, there are a lot of districts with different minutes per day with elementary versus secondary, and different folks have had different opportunities to look at, how you want to structure that. But even for calendar option B. The bell schedule aligns to some other districts in Texas. But again, through this process, it was, let's put it out to the community and kind of see what the preference is. Adding minutes to get out before June or leaving it traditional.
There were several reasons why we felt like adding the additional 20 minutes. There were some advantages. So why don't let's talk for just a minute about what those are.
That was the minutes that were added were actually one of the appeals at the elementary level. And they had several reasons for that, and I can be, at the board's pleasure, I can get more detailed information for Thursday's meeting. The minutes themselves, while they may not seem long enough to really accomplish a lot, are really beneficial and helpful because as the curriculum has gotten more robust, it takes more time for original instruction, as it's referred to. So sometimes those minutes are really important in adding some flexibility to the school day for interventions, for enrichment, for extending lessons that students are really involved in. The subject areas that tend to suffer when you want to extend a lesson tend to be science and social studies because of the high premium that's put on literacy and mathematics. So those added minutes help to provide flexibility and more robust opportunities for those intervention. It also puts instructional minutes before annual assessments that tend to come towards the end of the year, obviously, so that the assessment doesn't occur and then you continue on into the summer after the evaluation for the year's work has already taken place. So it gives more instructional time where it's needed the most. As I thought about this and listened to the discussion and touched base with some principals, they also brought up the intervention process that begins typically in August when students are struggling, and in many of our campuses where they're making up language gaps for children who have language deficits due to poverty. Conditions at home or whatever, for students who just need a little bit of extra help, regardless of what campus they are from. For each of those, teachers tend to stay after school and help those students. So they have regular schedules where they work after school to provide some of the support that students may need. All of those factors added up made this particular calendar really appealing because of those added instructional minutes. It's, again, it doesn't seem like a lot of time, but when you look at for example, a science lesson cycle, one of the principals said a good solid lesson cycle in science is 45 minutes minimum. And very rarely is that kind of time available during the school day. It gives you the flexibility to extend that and to execute in areas that schedules are really tied at the current time. So I can get more explicit feedback again at the board's pleasure for the Thursday meeting if you all would like.
How are you dividing up that 20 minutes in elementary? You talked about this math and science. Do you say, okay, we got 20 minutes, you get 4 minutes, you get 4 minutes, everybody else gets... How do you divide that 20 minutes up?
That's a really good question. Each campus has different needs, and they tend to be very specific to that campus. So each campus devises their own master schedule. And at the beginning of the year, as those schedules come in, that's when we vet them to make sure that there's the best balance for that campus's needs. So there's not one answer that fits all, but I can probably say with 100% certainty that it's not divided up 4 minutes per subject area, but rather implanted in the schedule in a manner that will allow flexibility for the needs of that campus.
So that'll be decided at the campus level?
Yes, sir.
You're going to give our elementary schools 20 minutes worth of recess maybe?
For the younger grades, to be quite honest, that could very well happen. It just depends. There's, even from grade level to grade level, you will see those differences. What a 10-year-old is quality instruction time is going to be very different from a 5-year-old.
Yes.
Well, don't we vary already as it is on each campus?
I'm sorry?
I know don't we vary already based on whatever is needed at that time?
Yeah,
So there's not going to be one master schedule just like there isn't already, so.
Correct.
That's correct.
Well,
It's the start and end time that's going to be consistent across the.
and I would think this would also, like you said, give flexibility. If a school sees they might want an enrichment/tutorial time, instead of making kids stay for an extended day, you could build that into your day, because some campuses do have that. So
Exactly.
it gives them a little more wiggle room, is what I thought.
Exactly. And it also captures all of the children who may benefit from enrichment or intervention. For some of our campuses, if children have to provide their own transportation home, then they're just not able to stay. So you run
And
into
we do run into
situations
that,
like that
yes.
as well.
Build it into your school day.
You're just jumping a bit. Go ahead.
Well, y'all are answering most of my questions, so I'm not having to do it. My grandson goes to elementary school, another district, and they are there at 7:45 to 3:30. That last 30 minutes, they're outside playing. So when I looked at this and I said, okay, 20 minutes, how do you justify that you can use that as a educational part? Children at that age, to give them an extra 5 minutes in a classroom is just not enough. What I'm looking at is that last 20 minutes, is that going to be used literally so they can go outside during the day, rather than trying to put 4 minutes in this group, or saying, hey, I could use 20 minutes, and another school says, no, not in this category. What is equal to all the kids that are going to get this benefit?
At each grade level, the decisions are made by, and it's usually driven by the teachers at that grade level. It's driven by the needs of their student at that grade level. So what you might see a kindergarten teacher do, for example, at the beginning of the year, it's not uncommon for them to have a rest time after lunch. And it's just that pick-me-up time. If you're a little 5-year-old body, then you lay your head down on your desk. The teacher might play music or whatever. You have that opportunity for respite before you do the afternoon activities. At that level, I'm sure you probably know, they tend to do the language arts and
The least
math
time to
in
do the
morning.
afternoon is you do your reading.
Exactly.
The least you get out of those kids is after the afternoon, just like adults. You go to a seminar and by noon, you don't want to hear anything more.
Exactly.
So, my idea would be, how do we promote that they could be outside a little bit longer? And that way it would be for all the kids. My second question, though, when I looked at this again, early releases. I think I've asked this every time. Is there any way that you could eliminate those early releases so the students are in the school all day and use that 20 minutes to make that happen?
The early releases, until the board actually approves a calendar, we don't really plan the early releases because it really depends on which calendar we go with. Typically, those are used at the elementary level for an opportunity for parents to have parent conferences. So that half day is, sometimes you have to make a trade-off, the importance and the value that you place on the parent conferences versus, again, the half day of instruction that's involved.
Well, I think the most criticism I get is the early releases, because of parents that I see as that's a waste, because the kids are leaving at 11:30, they're eating at 9:30, 10 o'clock. And the question to me was, how could that 20 minutes be implemented by using the early release as an all-day factor? I didn't have an answer for that. But that was just, I just wanted to bring that up.
I
Yeah.
will check.
And did our early releases, are we actually going to have to decline them this coming year? Did something change in the rules that?
The state waivers have been a subject of discussion. They are going to allow them. The difference between these two calendars is option B, because of the way it's structured. With the minutes, we would not need to have professional development. So, for example, when you get a waiver from the state, it has to be for professional development in the parent conferences. In option B, then we can choose which way we want to go with that. And again, until we pick the calendar, it's hard to ask people to invest that time and energy in a calendar that may not happen. So that's,
As always, we don't approve the early releases. Because they always seem to be like on a Friday before a holiday. Or they always seem to be the day after, like on a Monday type thing, early releases. So my preference is, why do we do that on the Friday before a holiday? And it seems to be a little bit of a pattern coming through there.
Discussion, they tend to happen, for example, at the end of a 9 weeks period, and they do as much as possible, because when you have an early release in the middle of the week, it does disrupt the children's routine, particularly at the lower grade levels. So if you do it on Friday, when they come back Monday, we're starting fresh again. But they are planned like at the end of, as much as possible, nested at the end of reporting periods, so that when you have those parent conferences, you're really kind of wrapping up the prior reporting period.
And the reason I'm asking these questions is because parents aren't here, and we get those answers. Hopefully they see it on the videos, that they're getting their questions answered.
That you can have them call me.
Have them call you, I'll give you.
I'll be glad to help.
Any further questions?
Yeah, as far as the employees, what was thought about in extending their days? I know some.
I'm sorry, sir.
The teachers, as far as the teachers themselves?
Their day is actually not changed in either one of these
No, it won't,
calendars.
actually.
They still report and end at the same time.
They have a set number of days they must work each year. Dr. 187 days. It doesn't really matter when we start or when we finish. They have to report.
No, but he means the minute and the days.
Minute and the days.
Am I correct, Dr. Bowen, that the day does not change? It starts, it's still, because we
Correct.
operate
Regular.
within the,
They're reporting in.
so they're not working any longer.
They
So
won't
if
be at school any longer than they would be.
It's just they're in the
This year.
classroom. They're in the actual classroom a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I mean, they have duties and everything else, though.
But
After
everything,
school.
everything operates within, we typically have, what's the time, I'm drawing a blank.
It depends it's a little bit different for
Yeah.
elementary and secondary, but,
Is it 7:15
they're
to
built on
3:15?
an 8-hour day minus their 30-minute
Right.
lunch. So they're built on a 7.5-hour workday.
So is it like till 4?
For secondary, their start and end time is 8 to 4. For teachers and for office, it's a little bit different.
Right.
And then for elementary, it's 7:15 to 3:40.
And those are guidelines for us. Professional staff, there is no time clock that exists, really. That's why you have people that you see up there early in the morning and staying late in the evening. But when they get their calendar schedule, it will be the time that she just mentioned, and that's not changing. That 20 minutes is operating within their time schedule.
What's the deadline that we have to have a calendar approved on?
Thursday.
No, I meant, well, yes, I understand we vote on this on Thursday, but what is there a time period? I mean, do we need to have this done before March?
Traditionally, the calendar is voted on by February, and that's really across the state, because for the reasons that were mentioned, when you put in the early release dates, professional development planning, trying to book different speakers and those kind of things would come in to do teachings, et cetera. February is traditionally when we approve it, just taking in all the planning that goes into the next school year into consideration.
And every month that you delay just creates more pressure on trying to get those things done.
Even our parent community, when they plan vacations in the summer and et cetera, it's that moms like to know what to tell the dad he's supposed to do. So,
Are we
run
the
into that a
last
lot.
in our area to approve a calendar? Because I think Fort Bend's already approved theirs for next year, I think.
Katie,
And Katie has to.
right?
Katie approved theirs on a 2-year schedule. We can pull that and see in Region 4, but traditionally, there's calendar committees at Region 4, and they actually start meeting around November, December, and there are conversations. Traditionally, most Region 4 school districts are approving their calendar in either January or February.
But what would be the purpose of postponing?
No. No.
I just asked.
Oh, okay. Well, we're having this really long discussion about
Well-
postponing, but
I don't know why we would either.
You,
I just asked if there was a deadline is all.
Oh, okay.
you can see from the questions from the board, our constituents have been calling us.
And emailing.
And the most vocal ones have been the ones supporting option A, and they just cannot understand why we do something crazy like option B. So that's the reason for the questions here this evening. They've been on the phone, but then you start looking, okay, you just have to look at the survey. What are the majority of people saying? And then when you take out, and we said, oh, boy, you can vote 5 or 6 times. You took care of that, and it slants it even more towards your option B, so.
Well, everyone that contacted me voted option C, actually.
Neither one?
They wanted to go the Fort Bend Katy route. Start earlier, get out earlier,
Well, that's-
and not extend the
Well,
days.
that's not an option right now, because then you say it takes 9 to 12 months.
And the calls I was getting was for the elementary schools, especially the younger pre-K Kers, to 3 o'clock, they're very tired. What can they possibly learn in 20 minutes? But you explained all of
You talked
that,
about the
so.
flexibility building into the
Yeah.
schedule, so I think we.
But that's where they were coming from.
Thank you very
All
much.
right.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, on with the agenda, Dr. Randall.
Yes, sir. I lost my place.
That makes about 5 or 6 of us.
Number 7.
That the Board of Trustees approve the purchase of 23 new 77-passenger buses with seat belts and 4 new 39-passenger lift buses in the amount of $3,020,825.
Are these, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are these seatbelt buses for the general public, or is it for special ed, or
All of it.
It's all
all
of them.
of them? So we are going the seatbelt.
Yeah, if you remember,
And they're-
during the bond committee, the proposal when it was put together, that question came up, and the decision was made within the bond committee that we were not going to equip those buses in this bond issue with seat belts. Right after that decision was made, the legislature came along and changed our minds.
That was an unfunded mandate.
It kind of was.
Okay.
But that's how these came to be spec'd with seat belts. They have 3-point seat belts on them. And they're set up so that they can, there's 3-point seat belts that will work for 2, larger high school or secondary kids, and they also work with 3 for the smaller elementary students.
Okay, but there's 23 new ones, so how are we going to figure out are we going back and equipping the ones we have with seatbelts, or just as we purchased?
We're not doing that. It's just from this point forward. There's 23 big buses and 4 smaller lift buses, special needs buses.
So, okay.
All right, thank you.
And the next item, you got a presentation earlier for Attendance Boundary Committee.
Yes, sir.
And the next item is consider approval of architect contract for, with VLK for the design of the Alternative Learning Center.
Is this that, the $12 million we approved? This sounded like a renovation rather than a new one. If I remember the bond we approved for new ALC, what's the, can you clear that?
This is, ALC in the bond was for an addition of new buildings at the ALC campus to pull in 1621 and all of them.
Okay.
Put it all on one.
All right, because it just described as new ALC, and This is
So it's additions and
additions to
renovations.
and renovations. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Everything's going to be at the same way.
Next item, we're asking the board to approve PBK Architects for the design of the Development Center renovations. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve VLK Architects for the design of Jane Long Historic Gym renovation. The next item, we ask the board to approve Morris and Associates for the design of the removal and replacement of the underground fuel tank and fueling island at the Rosenberg Transportation Site. Next item, we ask the board to approve PBK Architects for the design of language other than English, our LOT labs at Foster High School, Lamar Consolidated High School, and Terry High School. The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the design development of High School Number 6 and Junior High School Number 6, and we have a presentation.
Good evening, Mr. President, trustees, Dr. Randall. Thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of this this very, very important project. We're honored and we're grateful, and we understand the importance of this project, especially with the PASA report today. We tried to adjust our schedule while we were sitting in the audience, and we couldn't quite make that happen. But so today is a modified repeat. The presentation we're doing today is a modified repeat of the Fulshear campus, which is also a modified repeat of the George Ranch campus complex. Whenever we move from a one model to the next model as a repeat, modified repeat, we always want to visit with staff. We want to visit with the end users and the stakeholders and discuss lessons learned. We want to look at pros and cons of the existing facilities. We want to look at areas that we could change or make the facility better, as we did from George Ranch to Fulshear. So we visited with Leslie and Kevin and their staff for a few months, looking for lessons learned on Fulshear, even going back to George Ranch, and also toured a few local high schools outside of the district as well to look for new ideas within new high school facilities within the last year. We looked at changes to the exterior. We looked at changes to the interior. Lauren Pargu and his incredible team for the design of this project are going to talk about some changes on the interior, floor plan changes and program changes within the building. We also looked at a lot of exterior changes. So some of the things that we look at when we're looking at modifications to an existing model is market-driven situations, code-driven situations, pros and cons that I've already mentioned. And when we look at this exterior elevation, one of the things you may have already seen in your DD book that you have is the roof design has changed since the last two versions. So we are now looking at a low slope roof in lieu of a metal large pitched roof. One of those reasons is because of market conditions that I just mentioned. As far as steel cost and steel tariffs and steel going up, we're looking at the cost of steel versus the cost of other types of roof, and we're seeing that we can have a savings within this project, this version of the project, because of the cost of the materials for metal roof versus the cost of materials for other roofing products that are typically driven by petroleum versus steel. So while in the past we were able to have savings for metal roofs and the metal roof design, we're seeing, working with our construction manager, Dramala, we're seeing that we have a potential for savings or get to net neutral, get to net zero without an increase for steel costs. That's one of our issues with redesigning the exterior and seeing the lower slope roof, as well as we have code issues. So we have an international energy code that is new since the Fulshear design. So we're incorporating different code issues and different mechanical systems that are also beneficial to have a low slope roof as well. So with that is just a kind of a recap of where we've been the last few months. We're going to move into the interior of the building, and Lauren's going to describe the floor plans and the images, and then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Confiscate this from
Yes, please.
Mrs. Steenberg and members of the board, Dr. Randall, thank you again. Just to give you a brief overview of the site. Right now, we're currently located This is the location of our site. It's located at the intersection of Coleman Road and Mennonite or FM 2977. Right now, I'll get to that, moving too fast from my own self. Just in close proximity to George Ranch High School, Arredondo Elementary School, we have Highway 59 right here. Just the blow up of the site. So over the years, we've between Foster, Frisco site, George Ranch High School site, and Fulshire site, Fulshire site, the sites were long in tenure. This site here is more compact, so it offered us some opportunities to do a couple of things. One, again, this is FM 2977 that runs from north to south, and this is Coleman Road. Coleman Road currently stops right here at FM 2977, so during the construction of this project, we'll be extending Coleman Road to your property line. And it will become a major county thoroughfare at some time in the near future. We bring parents in this drive here for parent drop-off, and they were able to come in on Coleman Road, loop around, drive this way. Here's your main entry to your junior high school. If you have a student that's at the high school, they can continue this path along to the high school to here. This is your drop-off point, and then exit on Coleman Road, and then go either east. Well, you can't go anywhere but west for right now. For the high school, if they have a high school student only, they can come in this drive and follow this path to your main entry, drop off, and then exit here. That's your parent drop-off drive for both your junior high school and high school. Your student drive is separated from this drive. So your students will continue down Coleman, enter here, and you have student parking here or student parking here. We have a site designated for a possible future natatorium on the site. Your buses, totally separate from those two drives, would come in off of FM 2977 and follow this route along here. We come in, if you're going to the high school, they can drop off here, and there's a covered canopy that leads out from the cafeteria, just like you have at George Ranch and Fulshire, where the students will stand if it's raining, and they will load up here, and the bus will continue out, or they will come to the junior high along this path. And again, there's another covered canopy out there as well. Right now, we're currently showing special needs drop-offs at the corners of at the end of the high school here, and at the end of the junior high school on this end. Your athletic complex is, again, with this site, we were able to make it more compact, so we basically just made you an athletic complex which is within this area. Your high school football field will be here, your softball field here, baseball field here, tennis courts, practice football fields, and then in the center of all this, you have concessions and restaurants. Your field house. In previous plans, we've had the field house as a separate entity, and it was located here. Again, the sites were long and narrow. So on this plan, what we did was actually took your field house and made it into part of your high school. So all of your high school athletics, which we'll get to in the floor plan in a minute, but all of your high school athletics are located in this area, and they can all funnel out to their respective sports fields when they get ready for practice. One of the things too that we looked at was from Fulshire, the band practice area. We kind of wanted to get this into an area where the band could use it. So this could be used as future event parking, not future. It can be used as event parking if you have games going on in this complex. But we didn't designate it as student and band parking or parking, because we wanted the band wanted to be able to, once they went out for practice in the afternoon, it's usually the cars there. That way they won't have that issue here. They can come out, they can practice band, and then won't have to worry about any cars parked in their way. I didn't mention, here's a future site, possible site for a future 6th grade center on this site as well. Any questions on the floor of that?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is where the band were to practice, did you say that that's also student parking?
No, ma'am. It is not student parking. So at Fulshire, they would use it as parking. The coaches and everything would park there. They wouldn't park here on this one. We kind of isolated it to where if the band had to get out there and practice.
So they're not going to have to worry about dodging the cars like the Fulshire kids?
Yes, ma'am. And that was one of the things we discussed with the band director at Fulshire High School.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are we going to run into parking issues like we have at the other campuses when they overpopulate this school?
Currently, like just ran the numbers, we have, 56 more parking spaces than we do at George Ranch. At George Ranch. And
Okay.
I think George Ranch had more parking than Fulton Complex, correct?
All right, thank you.
I'll segue into this one. One thing I wanted to mention, Rick kind of mentioned all of the meetings that we had with the staff. A couple of things we did on this project. We toured a couple of Houston area high schools and just kind of gave Leslie and her staff some ideas of some new and interesting things that we've done with schools around the district. The other thing we did, we'll mention those once we move to the site plan, but one of the key things that we did, we know that safety and security is very important to you guys, to everybody behind me, and everybody that has students in the school, like myself. So what we did was we met with the Texas Safety and Security Council, which consists of former police chiefs of some former school districts like Cyfair and Cadiz. And we also sat down with Dallas Warren. And we kind of sat down with the floor plans, both the junior high and the high school, and just made our way through. You enter the main entry here, there's a vestibule area. So once you're in that vestibule area, you have to be buzzed in by the receptionist at the front desk. You can't just open the door and just walk in to the receptionist area. Once you get entry into there, they turn you to the rapid system. To be able to exit into the main school, they have to buzz you out of that door as well. We did look at this area because once you enter, you have a corridor that leads out into your main corridor of your school. So we put an access reader there that would also be a point of non-entry for anybody who was able to make it through here and then get past the receptions. Another thing we looked at was, we put some card readers at certain locations around the school, looked at placement of cameras, but also with Officer Segura that's out in the hallway, and just kind of fine-tune our entry points. There you go. We just kind of fine-tuned some of those things and just really looked at the plan and just made sure we could provide some safety and security for the schools. Dallas Warren also asked us, we know at George Ranch High School there's some issue with first responders, and this could be at any school, with first responders once they enter the school. They have to have a line of communication, whether they're back here in your CTE area, up here in your classroom area, anywhere in the campus, and sometimes you have dead spots. There's a code now that basically requires us to have communications within that school that first responder, when he walks into those doors, he will not lose signal no matter where he is in the building, can communicate to any one of his staff or anybody that's in that building. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Michael Hood to walk you through the floor plan.
Thank you, Lauren. All right, so as Lauren mentioned, and as Rick mentioned as well, what we'd like to do is, really kind of reflect on what we've done in the past, what we've done at Fulton, what we've done at George Ranch, Foster. Obviously, this is one of the grandchildren of those schools, and so we really want to, stay humble and make sure that we're putting in, we're keeping ourselves honest and adapting to change. And so one of the things that I'd like to point out is the changes that we've kind of brought into this area over here. First and foremost, I'll start with the library. We kind of wanted to make a gradient of how the space could be utilized, with the part that's the closest to the Main Street corridor being the most active, the most social, the most interactive. And as you progress further into the library, you get more quiet, you get more calm, more focused. And so the furniture is meant in this current layout to reflect that gradient. And obviously, with this library, we've been looking at next-gen learning. And so a lot of this equipment, shelves, furniture is all movable, reconfigurable, so that it can be more dynamic. Working over this way, you can see that we've had a few changes to the fine arts area. There were 2 classrooms there. We've been able to reconfigure those and relocate them, so that we can actually provide an orchestra room for the school. And we're working our way down towards the CTE area. This has been reconfigured as well, and we've also added a deaf prep area classroom right there as well. So going back to the other side, we have our athletic wing. And as Lauren had mentioned, there's quite a few changes here, just because the field house is now fully integrated with the school. And so now you have a dedicated athletic wing. And what that allowed us to do was experiment with the entire layout of the field house and really look at any redundancies that would happen in the high school that now maybe don't need to happen because the field house is now connected. And so what we've done is we've taken advantage of those efficiencies and really allowed some of the spaces to be further utilized. For example, we have a larger weight room. As you can see, this corridor is now fully connected, it's fully integrated. In addition to that, working our way up, we also have some changes to the gyms. We now have a dedicated visitor and parent entry. So now instead of coming back from this side or from over here like what might happen at Fulshire, they could now actually come in from dedicated parking over here, separate from the students, separate from the coaches. And so now that that's separate, I've been told that parents might not necessarily run back to the second hallway and say, why didn't my son play? Or, so you can hopefully avoid some of those instances. And so moving up a little bit more, we actually have our multi-purpose room right there as well. We've actually gone ahead and made it into one space with an operable wall partition within the drill team and the multi-purpose room, so they can be utilized more flexibly. Moving on, second floor. Once again, a lot of these classroom lanes haven't changed very much. What we've been looking at over here is actually some of our CTE classrooms as well. So we now have a criminal justice room dedicated. So it's going to have your spot for your jury, for your judge, for witnesses, and they'll be able to actually reenact and enact cases and trials real time in the classrooms. We also have health sciences rooms over here as well. And so they'll also, like the criminal justice room, have the ability to, start to see what it's like to work as somebody in this field. There's going to be cots, there's going to be scrub rooms, and so they'll really be able to have a much more in-depth experience in these fields, whether even out of high school. And so moving forward, we have our exteriors. One of the things that we wanted to look at when trying to define an architectural vocabulary for these new schools is how can we both honor and pay homage to what's come before the school, while also helping to identify something that makes these schools unique in their own way. Just how George Ranch and Fulshire and Foster also have their own individual characters. And so what you can see here is actually from the front entry, from the staff and visitors part, looking towards the front entry. And over here is actually, once you enter into the main corridor, the front entry, past the vestibule, this is what you're going to see. And so back behind here, you'll have your Main Street corridor, and you're facing right into the Learning Commons. From the other side, looking back, this is in the Learning Commons, the library, looking forward towards the front entry. You can see here, Main Street's also progressing in this orientation.
Mike, if I can interject, on this screenshot right here in the library, one thing that we did look at was being able to put a collaborative area within the library, or basically a breakout area for a classroom. There are a couple of different options you might see on your DE book. What we had is kind of like a glass box on the other side of the library. We kind of thought about it again this morning. We wanted the receptionists to be able to have that full 360 view and not have that visually be obscured. So what we did was we utilized the space that was over here. And that space could have a glass folding partition or just a glass wall that will basically give it the same view to the library. It could be used as the same purpose. It could have, basically it's a classroom within your library. So if they want to have somebody come in and do a little presentation within that room, it would basically be the size of a classroom, about 750 square feet. And it could be used just the same as you would use a classroom with writable surfaces and everything. So we kind of took that out of the middle again, just wanted to be able to give that librarian that full 360 view and kind of repurpose some of the spaces on the perimeter of it.
Question. So moving on, we have the dining commons a little bit farther down the Main Street corridor. This is actually from closer to the serving line, looking back towards the Main Street corridor. Oh, seating, yes. So we have our standard seating. We also have, we've introduced a variety of seating types. And so we kind of have a more bar stool seating. There'll be charging areas, kind of more individual or small groups. And then we also have booths back here along the space. And so students will You know, instead of having to only sit in a standard seat, we'll have the option and the opportunity to basically choose where they'd like to sit, eat their lunch.
And as we're going through these images and you're looking at these, keep in mind that none of the spaces, the square footage of the spaces changed from your previous plan to this one. This is just introducing a new look and a new feel to the campuses that you already have and seen in place. But we didn't change any of the square footage, so that could be the same image at Fulshire, just with different finishes and different materials.
Absolutely. And so on that note, I will hand it over to the chair. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I have a question. Okay. While I was looking at this, the restrooms that are near the football area at the bottom.
Athletic wing?
Yeah, the athletic ring. Just because I'm a girl. Okay. You have the restrooms right across from the varsity football. That's the boys, but then you have the girls coming down that area, around the varsity football, around the football lockers, down that hallway, weight room, and then the girls. And in my mind is, why are they at the very corner and not up there closer to the gym?
These are all your athletes that would actually be, so you have two separate areas. You have your PE that's up here that would serve all this area. These are actually your locker rooms for your girls' athletics with their showers and restroom facilities. These are actually like track and field, softball, soccer, all the outdoor field sports. And the same, so everything back here is pretty much the field sports for your athletic areas for your boys and girls.
So the girls are there in the corner instead of being in the middle.
Are you asking why you're parading the girls down?
Exactly,
boys to get to their
exactly, that's
restrooms?
what I'm asking for.
Well, they'll probably be
The
outside
location.
going in.
Yeah. I was trying to figure that out.
Really, it could be flipped vice versa either way if we wanted to look at that. We could reorganize some of the spaces here if we need to relocate them. Pretty much we took the floor plan that we had and just massaged it and just cleaned it up a lot. So actually, if you looked at the old plan, all the boys' locker rooms were back here, and the training room and everything was here, and the girls was right in that location. We just basically kind of left them where they were and kind of massaged the rest of it and just kind of cleaned the layout of it up.
It's
But
just
if
something
it's-
to
right,
consider.
if it's
If
something we need
would
to
y'all
look
have
at,
an
maybe-
issue with the girls maybe going down there
No, ma'am. I mean,
through
that's
that
definitely
particular
something-
area? I'm just thinking.
No, we can take that into consideration and take a look at it. We appreciate the comment.
Excuse me, would you also, what you said in our meeting today about how you changed the stairwells?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you for catching that. Let me go back. So one thing that has changed up in these areas, there used to actually be two stairwells. There'd be one here and one here. And given the recent code changes, one of the opportunities that we had was actually to open those stairs up. They used to be enclosed. They were designated as fire stairs. And so in light of this code change, we were able to actually combine these stairs into a wider, much more generous, open stairwell. And so it's a lot more encouraging and welcoming to use by the students. And so hopefully that if there's any congestion issues, that could help alleviate some of that, while also providing another means of leisurely egress down onto the first floor. And in addition to that, sorry, one more thing, yeah. Now that these spaces have been opened up, we were given another opportunity to actually utilize those as kind of breakout spaces for the classrooms. And so like you have in the library, we also have flexible, operable, changeable seating in this area, as well as marker boards that span these spaces. And so that provides the students a place to go and break out from larger groups into small groups for studying, for things like that. So,
I have a question. Perhaps I just didn't understand, but at that second point of entry, when we were talking about safety and security at that vestibule.
Yes, ma'am.
Right now, when you enter any of the schools after you've passed the initial vestibule and the receptionist allows you to come in and into the building, there's kind of this grand entrance, you know, you see that.
Yes,
Are
ma'am.
you saying that we're not going to have that access to that anymore? Is that?
Right here?
Yes, when you said that there's a second point of entry that you'd have to have permission to go through
So you
in that
come
very.
into here, and basically you're inside this vestibule, and you're pretty much locked there until the receptionist buzzes you in.
Right,
So it forces you into here.
okay.
She wrappers you in, then she buzzes you into that area.
Okay, so she buzzes you into kind of that big grand entry, that
Yes.
big.
Yes,
yellow
ma'am,
one.
which would
Okay.
be,
And that's only for visitors.
This
If it's
entry
students, that would be open till a certain time.
yes.
But,
And then block.
but
Grander
you
scale
spoke about
than
that
Western
corridor.
North.
If they,
But you spoke
if they
about the
walk past the
corridor.
receptionist going in, they still don't have necessary straight access to the school. You still have to have a card reader to get into the
Yes,
school.
sir.
If you go into George Ranch, you go, well, any of them, you get into the main entrance, they'll let you into there. But if you bypass the secretary, go down by the principal's office, turn the corner and head down the corridor there, you still can't have direct access to the school even if you get on past them.
Oh, I see, so you're not gonna have to go through there.
No, no,
for
no,
a
no.
second time. Okay, got
They,
it.
they buzz you
Thank
into this area, but only
Okay.
after you've been wrapped or checked
Got
out, and she allows you to, he or she allows you
I
access into that
understand
area.
that, thank you.
Tell me. There you go.
Good evening, Tony Cherian. So this is the first floor of the junior high school. This layout is very similar to Lehman Junior High. You have your circulation down the spine of the building, and to the left you have your academic wing with classrooms and science labs. And in the center you have your library and admins, and to the right you have your fine arts and your athletic wing. And not a whole lot of changes as far as the overall plan. The major changes occurred where that dashed line is. We'll show it below up there. So the big challenge here was to create a fourth fine art space. So orchestra never existed at Lehman. So in order for us to create a fourth space, we kind of massaged the spaces there, kind of shifted a lot of program without eliminating anything and without growing the footprint of the building. And so now there's a dedicated orchestra space right there. Kind of similar to what Mike touched on, the library has a lot of that flex spaces as well as the collaborative spaces there as well. We also, going back to the first floor, we also took care of the fire stair that kind of created awkward spaces for students and staff to kind of facilitate that. Second floor, very similar. The wing to the left has your academics, your classes in sciences. Here's that stair again for easier circulation. And we also updated this science area. The science was kind of above that orchestra area. We kind of shifted that over to here and kind of made it all function with much ease. The high school is not as glamorous as the junior high is not as glamorous as the high school with a lot of changes. So a lot of it, we just made it a lot more efficient and more functional.
And once we move out, this is a junior high school, and it's pretty much just the same architecture that we're using at the high school. It's going to be on the same site. So of course, we wanted that architectural character to just flow from one school to the next. So pretty much the same palette, same brick colors, same roof colors that you saw in the high school images. Again, at the junior high school, we kind of toyed around with that location of that collaborative area within the library. We again took that and moved it out to the side. Again, just wanted to give that full view for that librarian. So that collaborative area would be on this side of the library. Commons area, again, same space you would see at Lehman or Reading. We just took it, added a little more character to it, and give it its own identity. Project schedule and budget, where we are today. We're here today just present you the design development. And if we're, given approval on Thursday, we proceed to continue on with our construction documents and continue meeting with our CEM at risk and just further define and develop the documents. And the big item is substantial completion. We're looking at having these buildings done by June 30th of 2021 for students to start August 2021. Below you just see the project budget allocation. Estimated construction cost of the high school is $102,465,000, with the junior high school being $50,220,000. That's our budget now that we're working towards reaching with the CM at risk. With that, we have just a short animation for you to enjoy. Are there any more questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. President, we'll transition to Williams Elementary School.
Now I'd like to introduce a new architect as Huckabee Architects and Michael Vallia.
Perfect.
Did I say that
Yes,
right?
you said it.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present Williams Elementary School renovation. This is our first project working with you all, and we've met with the principal and Kevin's team. We've worked diligently to come up with a very efficient renovation that meets and fixes a lot of the challenges that we have at the elementary school. This is an existing image of the school. Just to put it into context, right now the parent drop-off is right in the front here, the bus drop-off is right here, and you enter the school right in this location. So what we are looking at doing is doing a selected demolition of this space right here. This is the existing admin space. So currently, right now, you would enter in here into a lobby. On this side, you have your cafeteria, a stage, and then your gymnasium. And so right now there is no secured vestibule. So the students come right through this space here into this lobby. Also parents come in right through here and then have to check into the admin space. So what we're proposing is to move admin here to this spot, which is the classrooms. This is the plan showing the renovation that moves the admin space to the front here. What we're proposing is a new canopy. They come into this lobby space and then into the reception area to get checked in. Then they get buzzed in through this door and then have their way back into the school. That allows us the opportunity here to kind of open this place up into this collaboration space, kind of modernize the school. Works for collaboration during the day, and then after hours, becomes that pre-function space. If you have an activity or event after hours that you can have out here. We also added 3 doors, cross-corridor doors, so that space can get locked down at any time, and you cannot go back into the school. So if there is a event that happened at the school, those doors could get locked down, and then they can't go back into the school where the classrooms are. Also, if you're having an after-hours event, those doors could be closed, and the rest of the school could be secured. The principal is relocated up to the front here, so there's eyes onto the parking lot, conference room, assistant principal, counselor, and then speech office right here. This is a view of the new front of the building, and then what that collaboration space might look like. And then I'll open it up to any questions you might have.
How many classrooms were taken up at the front there?
So we had two classrooms here, and then these were office support for SPED, speech, diag, and they were relocated within the new office layout.
So where were those classrooms relocated to? I'm sorry.
So this school has an addition that was built on the back, so there's already current capacity there to remove those 2 classrooms.
Okay.
And so it wouldn't be overcrowded, of course.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits when we did the new ABC and moved those folks.
Lower capacity.
We opened up those classrooms.
Right, they're
because
low
of-
capacity now, but will you be able to fit those?
That's what I'm asking. You
It's
said that
it's
they're
still
empty
be around
classrooms.
750,
We still
the
don't
same.
use the 750 capacity. That school actually has a little more capacity.
Then 750?
That's
Okay,
correct.
that's what I wanted. Okay, perfect, thank you.
I worry about that too, guys.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Lost those-
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, appreciate it. I like that.
The next item, we ask the board to approve.
Didn't Meyer have the same layout?
Yep, and Austin.
Are we redoing those as well?
No. I mean, we can give that some consideration, in the future, but right now, this is the only one that was in the bond issue. Next item, we ask the board to approve Winning Way Services for building code compliance review for Williams Elementary in the amount of $825. Next item, we ask the board to approve Winning Way Services for building code compliance review for high school number 6 in the amount of $81,275. The next item, we ask the board to approve Winning Way Services for building code compliance for the junior high number 6 in the amount of $36,975. The next item, we ask the board to approve Winning Way Services for Texas Accessibility Standards Review in the amount of $1,250. The next item, we ask the board to approve Winning Way Services for Texas Accessibility Standards Review for high school number 6 in the amount of $5,950. The next item, we ask the board to approve Winning Way Services for Texas Accessibility Standards Review for junior high school number 6 in the amount of $3,550. Next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve Winning Way Services for Texas Accessibility Standards Review for Williams Elementary in the amount of $1,650. The next item, we ask the board to approve Winning Way Services for Texas Accessibility Standards Review for Georgia Junior High School in the amount of $1,250. The next item, we ask the board to approve change order number 1 in the amount of $27,344 and final payment in the amount of $417,511.55 to Turner Construction Company for the construction of the natatorium at Foster High School. Next item, we ask the board to approve deductive change order number 1 in the amount of $1,884 and final payment in the amount of $424,518.65 to Turner Construction Company for the construction of the natatorium at Fulshear High School. Next item, we ask the board to approve deductive change order number 1 in the amount of $28,966 and final payment in the amount of $422,200.10 to Turner Construction for the natatorium at George Ranch High School. The next item, we ask the board to approve purchase of 14 temporary double-wide dry classrooms and 3 temporary restroom units from Palomar Modular Buildings in the amount of $1,093,042. Next item, we ask the board to approve restorative services as the primary vendor and J.R. Jones as a secondary vendor for the maintenance and waterproofing repairs throughout the district. Next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve the CDL third-party testing agreement with Spring ISD for the purpose of skills testing Lamar CISD school bus driver trainers. This will speed up that process of getting our drivers certified or licensed. Next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to consider approval of a blanket purchase agreement with HON Company and authorize the Board President to execute that agreement. Next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to approve Terry High School projects in the amount of $100,800 to be funded with proceeds remaining from the 2011 bond program.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What are we thinking about doing?
Each one of those things that are listed there, new lifeguard stand,
So it's not
lane
Terry High
ropes.
School, it's the natatorium. correct?
Yes,
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 yes.
the natatorium.
Thank you.
Did I not say?
What said Terry High
I
School
apologize.
projects, but that's what
Yeah.
it says.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
But if you read it, it's not like a pool.
The next item, we ask the Board of Trustees to consider approval of the purchase of interactive flat panels and installation hardware and services from Pro Computing in the amount of $824,414.83, plus a 10% contingency of $82,441.48, for a total of $906,856.31, and electrical work from Irvish in the amount of $16,132. The next item, we ask the board to approve the purchase of security cameras, installation hardware, network cabling, and installation services not to exceed the amount remaining in the 2011 and 14 bond for security cameras, currently $112,561.13. The next item, we ask the board to approve the purchase of network switches and installation and configuration services in the amount of $518,915.05.
That completes our action items. We're going to information items.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. We had the report from PASA for demographic update. Do you have any questions regarding the naming of new schools? We're basically following the same process that we followed the last time, and you have your book of names.
Thank you for consolidating that and
Yes.
putting it on, putting electronic where we might have.
You saved a few trees this time, right?
Thank you. And it's still going to be a task to get done, but thank you.
Yes, it is.
The staff will present a report or an update on the district improvement plan on Thursday. Do you have any questions regarding the tax collection report? Payment for construction projects. The 2014 or 2017 bond. And of course, we have projects funded by the 2011 available bond funds. We will also do a special education update on Thursday as well. Does the board have any questions regarding the notification of intent to enter into tax abatement agreement? And this is Rosenberg notifying the board.
What's that mean for us? I mean,
It really doesn't mean anything other than they're
They're
letting
doing
us know
theirs.
that they're doing it. It doesn't have an impact on us.
I gathered that, but I want to make sure.
Yes, sir. It's required by law for them to notify us. And we do have a report on the whole child safety and wellness model update. There was a question asked regarding the structure of the staffing of the counselors, and Dr. Roberts is going to give a quick review and answer any questions you have.
Good evening. The whole child safety and wellness model that we presented in May of last year is multifaceted and comprehensive and is currently being implemented pre-K-12 this year. The initial rollout, we asked principals to look at their campus needs and to make adjustments to counselors' duties so that counselors would have time to implement the model with fidelity. The principals were very supportive on the why. They understood why this was a good idea, that the adjustments needed to be made, but it became very apparent that the how became problematic. It soon became clear that the reassigning of duties was not as easy as it appeared, and so we began collecting data in October to better understand how we would need to adjust. We're collecting data by campus on where counselors' time is being spent and looking for obvious trends and patterns. In addition, we're looking at those campuses who have made progress towards removing duties and allow counselors to better support the social and emotional needs of our students, to understand if any of those are able to be replicated. All campuses are not the same size and provide supports for different programs, so the adjustment was not necessarily a one-size-fits-all proposition. The shift has been significant, and while we are absolutely not where we want to be at this time, we are actively gathering information so that when we begin next year, we are better prepared to meet the expectations as outlined by the model that was presented. With regards to decreasing the student counselor ratios, the plan outlined that was presented to the board in May asked for one additional counselor at each of our Title high schools to reduce the student counselor ratios, as well as an additional family support specialist so that we would have one per track. That did happen for 2018-2019 this school year. And based on counselor data that we're collecting, as well as national and regional data, the staffing recommendations to lower student counselor ratios will be offered as requested by the Executive Director of Student Programs at the end of this month for review by the leadership team. And this is consistent with what was presented at the board in May.
Questions?
I have one.
Yes, ma'am.
I went to a SHAC meeting and then the ABL Learning Lab. Are y'all working together on that type of program?
Y'all meaning?
This child safety wellness group is working with SHAC.
So we do try to collaborate where they overlap, and I believe that was the first presentation that was presented on that type of learning model, right? And so we are absolutely actively engaging in conversations. Now, where that leads, I don't know because it's just in the beginning stages. But yes, ma'am.
But y'all are collaborating together
we
with that
are in
one.
communication. Okay. Yes.
You mentioned that several campuses have made progress. What campuses have made progress?
Ones that come to mind, Huggins,
Mhm.
Ryan Middle School, but those are just ones that come to mind. There are others, and I hate to just name those two and not recognize others as well.
That's fine, but what did they do to be able to achieve that progress where other campuses have not been able to do it?
You know, based on their, I guess, the programs and what they have on their campuses, they adjusted responsibilities off the counselor's plate so that they were able to spend more direct time with counselors. And those principals could speak more directly to those specifics that they moved. Again, they support different programs on those campuses and have different enrollments and things of that nature, so that would be something specific that those principals could speak to.
I had heard that they basically loaded up an AP with those responsibilities, so the AP doesn't have, maybe not necessarily doing AP things. Is the solution to this manpower?
Mr. Steenburgen, are you asking me?
Because
that's a loaded question.
I understand that, but I know it becomes difficult because of the load that we have on everybody right now. And if you take work off of people and give it to other people already loaded up, it makes it more difficult to accomplish your task. So, you know.
I think that is probably the $1 million question right now.
It's a multi-million-dollar question, actually.
Well, I think you probably hit the nail on the head. Right now, and when you receive the special education update on Thursday, all administrators, and by virtue of being part of the leadership core, counselors are involved in the federal corrective action plan that is been, and this is just one of those changes that are outside our circle of influence, but definitely in our circle of concern. Through no fault of our own, TEA had implemented an 8.5% cap, and this is just one example of legislative action that increases administrative burden on school districts. And the intent was good. I would like to be clear about that. I don't think anyone sets out to create more burden on campus administrators. But that in and of itself has introduced an enormous amount of referral process activity, response to intervention activity, of what are called problem-solving team activities, and all of those must be addressed this year. The increase has been substantial throughout all of the districts in the state of Texas. That happens to occur at the same time that the assessment process, which involves having testing coordinators in place, has increased significantly. And then we have a new rollout of the socio-emotional program. So as Jennifer said, one size fits all is not possible to mandate, that we can sweep away all of those duties to any one or two people in the district. It's going to be creative scheduling and working together with that core team. The campuses that have been able to do it tend to be campuses, for example, if you look at one elementary campus has 5 major extra special education programs seated on it. So they have a different burden with art committee meetings, with incoming or intake of students who are coming from other districts and are placed in those programs. Each one has its own profile of administrative duties, and some of them are over capacity, so that would create extra duties. It's not something that every single school district in the state is facing. We do have the benefit of Dr. Roberts' leadership in creating a vision that we can work towards. Doing it in the first year of implementation.
Well, I understand that's problematic.
That's going to be.
And I think that the study that was mentioned earlier, when we are able to have some data that we can take and react to, it may actually have a impact as far as staffing is concerned.
I would expect that.
Well, question, because I know that one of the biggest burdens on either counselor or assistant principal has always been the testing. And some schools do have testing coordinators, but that's more in secondary, right? That's not in the elementary. So that's where they have that burden along with everything else they
That
do.
actually is not, in fact, as a principal, I was without an assistant principal 1 year, and so was able to easily do both district assessments and the STAR testing. When you get down to it during assessment season, that may take a few hours a day, and we actually had a principal who did it last year. And if you create a system to do that, it isn't that labor intensive at the elementary level. And part of it, because at the secondary level, you also have AP assessments, SAT, ACT, PSAT. So they have other generations of assessment that they have to give, whereas at the elementary level, you basically have your once a year assessments, state assessments. I would not like to point out principals by name in an open forum, but like I said, we've had several that have done it and done
picked up the
district
slack.
assessments.
That's
Yes.
good.
What we need to do in that instance, and we have at our upcoming principals meeting, we have a section called best practices. So we have several principals who are going to present at that time on how they handle the testing assessment, how they created a counseling schedule that was able to give the majority of the counselors time to actually counseling activity.
Okay.
So we'll be sharing those at that next principals meeting.
Okay, well, I appreciate the complexity and the difficulty of what you're doing, but I think it's an effort we have to keep pushing. And at some point in the future, I'd really like you to be able to share with us the progress we're making since you started gathering data now. At some point in time in a few months, I'd really like to see how we are progressing, because we're talking to people about how we're unloading our counselors, and I'd really like to have proof that we're doing that. So in a few months from now, I'd really like to be able to review that information. So,
I think we would be happy to do that. We're excited about it. We're excited about the, look for those bright spots to replicate, and so we've got some bright spots that we're going to be
that's why I asked
sharing.
about the bright spots. So.
We're going to get more of them.
We'll get more. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
The next item, Mr. President, is the health plan structural changes. The staff is here to answer any questions if you all have any regarding the changes. As you know, we provide this as an information item for the board so that you can have an idea of what changes are being recommended. And then the rest of it is incorporated into when we're starting to build the budget.
Any questions on this? I'm just expressed concern about it appeared that we're getting ready to, I know it's costing more everybody, but if I read this correctly, we're going to be asking our employees to increase their contribution again.
And the district.
And, oh, I realize, and the district too.
That's where Austin needs to.
All right, thank you.
The next item was a request to have some information regarding school resource division update.
Questions on this?
He's coming.
He's coming.
He's coming. He's been waiting back there all.
Let's comment on this, Lieutenant.
No, basically what we do for the city of Rosenberg, statistics are provided to the Rosenberg City Council on a monthly basis for all the divisions within the Rosenberg Police Department, including patrol, school resource division, community resource officers, and dispatch along with animal control. What this is for, the statistics that we keep are UCR, Uniform Crime Reports, that are reported to DPS in the state of Austin. And what that does, it determines for the police departments in the state of Texas, the need for more patrolling, the need for more officers in the area. It breaks down a lot of different areas, and I'm going to try and go through this very quickly for you so I don't waste a lot of time, but it's broken down into two parts. You have Part 1 offenses and Part 2 offenses, and Mr. Steenbergen got to see that at City Council, I know, because I was there also. Part 1 offenses are offenses against people, that can cause bodily injury, such as aggravated assaults, aggravated robberies, very high offenses. Part 2 offenses are the categories that fall into the simple assaults, the Class A assaults, and a lot of the Class C offenses that we deal with in our school district. All of you know that we have over 34 or close to 34,000 students, plus teachers, plus parents who are in our district every day. So that takes the number quite high. I have the numbers for December. These were presented to the City Council, so these are the numbers that I can tell you about tonight. There was a total of 37 cases that were filed by my SROs within the SRO division, either to Justice of the Peace courts, city courts, or county courts within Fort Bend County. When I talk about Part 1 crimes, we had one Part 1 crime during the month of December. So out of those 37 charges, you have one crime encompassing, 35,000 people. That's a very good number. That's not even 0.0001% that falls within our district. You can look at the chart that was given you today. The rest of them are Part 2 crimes that we do investigate thoroughly. You can see the terroristic threats, the public intoxications. If you look at most of them, they're Class C offenses that are presented to Justice of the Peace courts or the municipal courts. Now, from my experience over the past 13 years, I've known that these judges, when they see our juveniles in courts, they don't slam them. They don't give them hefty fines and jail sentences like everybody thinks. They send them to programs for, drinking alcohol, tobacco. They make them do community service hours. They make them write reports on what they've done wrong, and they may charge them a $20 or $30 court cost on the way out. But usually the people that are most upset about it are the parents, because now they got to pay that money, so guess who they're going to take it out on when they get home? And that's what we like to see. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask, and I'll answer as best of my ability.
Okay. I was disappointed in the report, and I was trying to figure out why, and I think it was because I was asking the wrong person as to having campus-to-campus issues. This is basically the worst of the worst that they end up in your courts,
Definitely.
correct?
These are cases that we have either arrested or filed with the courts.
So the everyday things that are going on, if there's a fight between a student and a student, or a student and a teacher, and it doesn't go anywhere with you, we don't know about that.
Well, that's on here. We have disorderly conduct on here, disorderly conduct fight. 4 were filed on in the month of December. Now, there could be kids, and you've got to take everything into consideration when you're dealing with students. Some kids are going to get mad at each other, and they may shove each other. We're not going to consider that a fight. And they may call my SRO to come and ask questions or talk to the students to find out what happened. But a lot of times we refer it to the administrators because we don't feel it meets the elements of a crime. No one was injured. People are going to get mad at each other. A lot of them happen at sporting events. A lot of them are kids. Realize if a kid is 10 years old, he can have charges filed on him or older. But at that age, you have to make a decision, a conscious decision. Is this kid really intentionally trying to hurt someone, or are they in school? Just like we grew up roughhousing, horse playing, and then it turned into someone getting mad at each other. So we take all that into consideration when we talk to these principals and to the students and find out what the root of the issue is, and then make a determination from there. Hey, this is better handled administratively. Contact the parents, get them involved, and you take care of it. Now, we may take an information report on it. That way, if it happens again later, we can say, hey, this is a continuing pattern with this child. Something needs to be done.
Well, rumors are rumors. People talk.
Sure.
And I, over time, my grandchildren and all, and when you hear them say, the drugs are so bad at my school, and they're just not being caught. And then I look at this, and I'm going, okay, one, that was reported for a month. I want to know, how do I weigh off? And that was the report I kind of wanted to see, is how many are reported, I suppose, to the principal? What kind of issues do they have that they don't get to this point?
Sure. There's different types of drugs that are introduced to school. They could be prescription drugs that are brought from home, that are taken from a parent's medicine cabinet, that these children know have certain side effects on you and make you feel a certain way, that they're going to hand out to another kid. Well, yes, that is a dangerous drug. It's a prescription drug, but it's a dangerous drug if it's not prescribed to you. So yes, you can be filed on for that. A big thing that occurred this past year is a designer drug. It's the THC oils that came out. Everybody knows these vapes that are in the convenience stores are easily accessible and bought by 18-year-olds. So they're buying 3 or 4 at a time for $8 and sell them to their friends. And in other states around us, this THC oil is legal, so it's getting mailed to people's houses. And they try it. Well, what they don't realize that having real marijuana, which is a Class B misdemeanor, and a THC oil, which is a controlled substance, goes to a felony. And in the school zone, it's a felony 1. So, but I will tell you, in the last month and a half to 2 months, we've seen a decline because kids are now finding out that this is not a misdemeanor anymore, and it's a very serious offense. Using a very little amount can get you a felony charge, and then it ruins the rest of your career, the rest of your college, you know.
I also think that it's important that we hear all sorts of things, but where's the data that backs it up? We actually increased the number of our dogs going on campuses in an effort to validate or invalidate that, and we did not see an increase in the number of hits that they had. Now, that's actual data. That's not something that I heard from somebody 2 or 3.
And that was what I was going to bring up next. The dogs have been out quite frequently now, and we're not getting any extra hits or because these dogs are trained to hit on weapons, drugs, alcohol, you name it, they'll hit on it, and we're not getting any extra, but it's good that we're getting them out there more frequently to check them, because now the kids are seeing, hey, they're coming out, make sure you leave your stuff at home if you have it, you know.
So the word's getting out that there are more of you
Oh, yeah.
out there now.
Definitely. Well, word got out after the first kid got arrested and said, hey, we don't want to go to jail like him, you know.
What about confrontations with the parents or with the teachers in the hallways and things? I guess it just bothered me when I'm being told, you know, well, this week from teacher, you know, this week we had 5 fights on the campus and it totally disrupted everything. That's what I get concerned about, is the morale of this particular school is noted for this particular school is noted for this.
Well, sure. I hear it all day long, Ms. Kay, and you know, I know schools are classified certain ways, but have not found it really to be true. We
Okay.
have the same incidents on every campus. 5 fights, I don't think we've ever had 5 fights in a month. I had just made a comment today that, hey, we had 4 fights in December. I said, that's a lot. We haven't been getting reported fights. You know, yes, they can be large disruptions because every kid in the hallway that sees it's going to gather around it and pull out their phones and try and record it and put it on Snapchat.
Yeah.
But they're usually diffused pretty quickly, and my officers are really on top of things, you know, being out in the hallways. And you can visit the campuses and visit with the officers. You'll see them out and about.
Yeah. Okay. I just the reassurance of you saying that.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
One quick question about the terroristic threats. That one troubles everybody.
Yes, sir.
You might address the level of those terroristic threats.
Yeah. As we all know, a couple of years ago, these school shootings started picking up again, since they've declined. But our district attorney and a lot of the judges have taken a zero-tolerance stance for terroristic threats and file everything that comes across your plate. So last year, we saw the numbers increase drastically, and any type of threat that's made on social media, by email, or directly to a person, my officers go out any time of the night, make home visits, get with the parents, get with the students, we search their rooms, and we make sure everything is clear. And that's something that we take pride in, because we're going to make sure that that school is safe the next day, as to where it used to be we would just wait till the next day and send extra officers to see what happened. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to get to the root of the problem that night. Now, terroristic threat can go anywhere from a Class B misdemeanor up into a felony, depending on the type of threat and whether they have the capabilities of carrying out the threat that they made. Most of them are Class B threats, and we see it on social media all the time. I hate you, I'm going to kill you, don't go to school, I have a gun, but they're very vague. But we still do a full investigation, and we usually have it done within 3 or 4 hours, and we're contacting Mr. Rockwood here to let him know what we came up with and that it's not a valid threat. And it's so much easier to send that out to the parents saying your kids are going to be fine, contact that parent, do not spread this message. Rosenberg PD has come to the bottom of it.
And mostly just classified kids mouthing off.
It's exactly what it is. It's exactly
I'd
what
like
it
to
is.
commend you too, because I know that does happen. We had a very young student do a threat to another student. And I can attest to the fact that y'all had an officer at their house.
Yes, ma'am.
And just in the evening. And it surprised the parent, and it surprised the child at the same time. But he was only 11 years old.
Yeah.
And that was a good start. And I was very shocked that y'all were there so quickly.
But we take it serious.
But
Officer
that was good.
Weisheimer just did 4 home visits to get to the root of where it came from, but it took him following a trail to get back to it, and it ended up being nothing. But we're going to make sure that's what it is before we come back.
It's good to hear that y'all are doing that, and I know y'all were,
Oh,
because
yeah.
I experienced it.
Oh, yeah.
Any other questions?
I just want to say thank you, and thank you for giving us that information,
Yes, ma'am.
because it helps us too, as we're out.
Well, sure, and this is posted on the city's website also, but
Okay.
if y'all would like it, just get with Dr. Randall and let me know, and I'll have it prepared every month. Mr. Steenbergen, thank you also for recognizing the SRO division at the last council meeting. That does mean a lot to me.
You're certainly welcome.
Good job saving your neighbor's life the other night.
I hope so. He's still hanging on. It's a 50-50 chance that he makes it. So,
All right, thank you again.
thank you.
All right, we do have do we have any audience patrons?
There were none.
All right. We need to go into closed session, adjourn to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082 of the Open Meetings Act.
Everybody else just
We'll
exhausted.
reconvene the open session at 8:57.
Pretty good, guys.
There are no action items from
Can I
closed.
just make a comment before we close?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I wasn't here at the last board meeting to vote for Dr. Randall, and I just wanted it on record that I support him 100%. And I apologize for not being able to come, but things happen. But I'm happy to be on here.
With that positive comment, this meeting stands adjourned at 8:57.